What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about the best quarterback throwing mechanics video of 2021, okay? So this is going to be a breakdown where we talk about all the specific things that quarterbacks need to be able to do to have a smooth, efficient motion, to be able to get as much velocity as possible on the ball, as much distance on the ball as possible, and be as accurate as possible. So these are two different clips from two of the best to ever do it. So we'll be talking about just some of the things they could do and some of the things that you can add to your game to make yourself a much better quarterback. So I hope this video gives you guys some value, but also, fellas, quarterback's not just about throwing the ball. It's not just about, okay, how hard can you throw it, how accurate it can be. You got to have the mental side of things down too. You got to be able to read coverages, understand defenses, how to recognize defenses. So if you guys want 400 plus videos on that specific topic, check out that very first link in the description, fellas. It'll take you to our website where we have 400 already made videos on how to identify each coverage, how to read defenses, right? So we have videos on cover 4, as you can see right here. And then we have also videos on just different play concepts. We have videos on RPO, cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, all the above. And also, if you want 200 plus specific quarterback gym exercises, quarterback on-field drills for throwing mechanics, also check out that very first link in the description. It's all included in a bundle package on our site. So if you want over 600 exclusive videos you can't find on any of our social media pages, check out that very first link in the description, fellas. Let's get started. So this clip right here, I don't really care if this video is fake or not. We're going to be focusing on just Brady's overall mechanics. So you see, the main thing I want to talk about is just the weight transfer and his release point, okay? So every single quarterback, you should be starting from the ground up. That's what we should be building from. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't be thinking about like this, like the way you take the ball back. A lot of people call it the stroke. Like that should be something in a lot of quarterbacks. Like unless you have a flawed mechanics where your elbow's dipping or you're leaning out of the throw, but you really shouldn't be thinking about that too much. The main thing you should be thinking about is weight transfer, hip rotation, and dissociation. And we're going to talk about what all those mean. So number one, what should start this throw is like quarterbacks, we got to make sure that I have weight on this back leg to start. You don't want to be 50-50. You don't want to be super heavy with your front leg. You want to be heavier with your back leg and light on that front leg, because that transfer of weight, you see how Brady just shifts that weight. That weight goes from that back leg to that front leg. That's what allows your hips to rotate through. So a lot of people think like, oh, just rotate with your hips, right? But if you just rotate with your hips and you're not transferring and you're not really driving off of this back leg, not the back foot, the back leg, we're not going to have as much power on the ball and your hips won't be able to open up. See, a lot of people just drive this back hip. A lot of people will go here and they'll just drive their hip. But you see when Brady does this thing, that front hip is also opening up. And that's the goal. That front hip will bring the back hip through. The goal position that we want to be in is right here. Hips are rotated through, arms at this nice clean release point, back is completely straight, back knees going through, and we have a bend to that front leg. This is probably the most textbook position that you could get to, right? So when you guys are throwing, you want to make sure that we're nice and relaxed, right? Nice and relaxed with my upper half, and your lower half is doing the work. I would say your legs and your hips probably do 90% of the throw, and the follow-through is probably 10%, right? It's like you're going out to dinner, your body's paying the tab, and your arms just tipping the waitress, right? So that's how we want to think of it. So when he shifts that weight, fellas, how you think of it, you don't want to push off of your back foot. It's not like you're a pitcher, because when you have a long stride, your mechanics are flawed. It's like you want to drive off of this back leg right here and shift that weight to the front leg. So when I can shift that weight to the front leg, that allows your front hip to open up. If you don't kind of believe what I'm saying, or you might think it might be a little different, try to stand up, stand with your front foot locked out, and try to rotate your hips without doing anything. Now, get some weight on the front leg. Now try to rotate your hips. That will make your front hip come open a lot easier, because you're in a more athletic stance, but your weight is shifted to the front leg. So that's how we have to think as a quarterback. That's how we have to be. That's like got to be my mindset when I'm trying to throw. When you're trying to get more velocity, you're trying to get something more on the ball, it's got to be from that lower half, right? And the next clip we're going to talk about is how you can get a better deep ball mechanically. And then it's going to be kind of the same concept. Nothing really changes, but we're going to break down this first to just get a better understanding. So now, as you're transferring weight, you want to go back with your hands. So what do I mean by that, right? So everybody loves to talk about, oh, you want to get to this like perfect opposite L angle, right? You want to get to this perfect L. That's not necessarily the case. You just want to make sure that you have some kind of a backstroke to where you don't lift the ball, okay? Because the sequence of the throw needs to be your front foot's coming down first, then your hips go through, then the shoulders go through, then the ball trails, right? That's the recipe for torque. That's the recipe for having a more consistent motion. So what a lot of quarterbacks do right here is that they'll have that front foot go down, but their shoulders are opening up the same time. They'll spread their chest. They'll get to double 90. They'll open up like this. Now, what happens is that your hips are rotating the same time your shoulders are rotating. So both are rotating at the same time. There's no torque. There's no separation there. You want to be able to get your hips to rotate through as your front shoulder stays coiled and stays on the target, because it almost serves as like that bow and arrow, right? To where like the wooden part of the bow goes forward. That's like your hips, and the arrow portion of your shoulder shoulders. So when you let go of this thing, there's just like a snap of the motion. And that's exactly what happens with Brady. It's here. His hips are transferring him through. The hip rotation is what's bringing this arm through. It's not because of his shoulders. He's not manually thinking about, okay, I'm going to bring my arm through. It's all based off of that rotation from his lower half, which comes from that weight transfer. I cannot stress that enough, fellas, that weight transfer is what's going to get the ball through. The weight transfer is what's going to get the hips through. And that's where we ultimately want to be. So now, when we get to here, when we have this some kind of a backstroke, right? This is where we want to be. The hip drive is what brings me up to this 90. And now when we finish on this throw, your front hand is everything when it comes to accuracy and your head. Where your head ends up and your front hand is everything about where this release point is. So when you guys throw, you want to think of it like your body's split down a midline, right? So you got a midline going down your back. Now, Brady, he does a great job of keeping that front hand. If you watch him throw, like he keeps that left hand almost by his collarbone, right? Now, again, that can be used for torque as well, because when you guys throw and you have all that rotation from your hips, if you just continue to swing your shoulder open, you're going to lose all that torque. You want to try to stay nice and square. What I mean by that is like I should be able to draw a square from your hips all the way up to your shoulders, and it should be pointed directly at that target. Obviously, you can have a little give from your left shoulder, but that square position keeps your release point at that nice, clean, consistent spot. So if Brady were to swing his elbow down because his body's split on a midline, his release would get pushed up high, like in this angle, right? So when your release gets pushed up high like that, if you release it early, it's going to sail. If you release it late, it's going to go straight into the ground. So if you're a quarterback who misses high a lot of the times, check your front elbow. And a lot of times that front elbow swinging down comes from lack of weight transfer and lack of hip rotation. Like I said, it all starts from the ground up, right? That weight transfer is what will start the throw. The weight transfer is what will get that front hip to go. But that also ties in because you're like, obviously we talk about this a lot. Quarterback comes a lot from that rotator cuff, right? You're doing a lot of rotation with that arm. Your arm's going from that L to L or like some kind of backstroke up to that 90. So there's a lot of stress on that rotator cuff. That's why doing rotator cuff warm-up exercise is so important for a quarterback. However, you're going to rotate one way or the other. Quarterbacks are rotational athletes, right? So if you're not rotating from your hips and you're not transferring weight, your front side's going to be the thing doing the rotation because that's the only way we're going to throw. We're not going to short arm it and like almost like alligator arm this ball. We're going to actually rotate through. So if your front side's doing the work, that's going to affect your release point. That's why a lot of old school coaches teach you want to swing the elbow down to your hip. That pushes that release so dang high. And that's if you release it early at all, that thing's going to sail over your receiver's head. And if you release it late, you're going to be coming down like a pitcher. So you got to make sure that I keep that front hand somewhere by my collarbone. You see how Brady's elbow just kind of stays right there. He stays nice and square. That's where we want to stay. That's the money-making position, right? So when I go here as well, a lot of guys have been taught that they want to start like this. They want to start with the left shoulder on the ball, on the target, and then they want to rotate and replace to where their left shoulder ends up to where their right shoulder was. So they swing their front side all the way around. Now, the problem with that is that when you guys go here and this elbow continues to pull this way, what do you think is going to happen? Your body's split down a midline, so if you keep pulling this way, your arm's going to pull this way. So if you're a quarterback who throws sidearm and kind of has that ball almost like have that upward angle on a spiral, usually it's because that front side's swinging way out of there. You're swinging your shoulder out. You got to make sure that we keep that front hand nice and tight to my frame, not like tight to where you can't move it and it's awkward, but that front hand should be somewhere by your face like you're eating a sandwich. That front shoulder shouldn't pull way out. You should just try to stay completely square so the hips and the weight transfer is what brings that football through, okay? So that is the number one key, especially with Brady has such a clean motion, and it doesn't look like, it's not that perfect textbook L to L. It's just he's got such a smooth stroke. The stride is quick, transferring his weight to get the hips through, and when the hips can go through before this football and you can stay square, that's going to give you a lot more velocity on it. You're going to have a much more consistent spot to where now it's just about extension. So you see how when Brady extends, right? So when he extends that arm, you see how his palm turns outward. That's how we get a cleaner spiral. A lot of people think that you want to just flick straight down and your hand wants to go like you're shooting a basketball. You want to get that extension. You want your release to be almost like 6 inches in front of your front stride. That's really technical. So essentially just make sure you extend, right? Just make sure you extend at that release point and turn that palm outward. That's what will help you get that spiral. That ball's got to roll off that index finger, but when you turn that palm outward and you can extend at that target, if all of this is clean, that's going going to make you more accurate. If all this isn't clean and you extend, there's going to be some different inconsistencies, right? The ball might go right, the ball might go left, but if we could stay clean with my upper half, I transfer weight to start the throw. I keep my shoulders back on the transfer to get that coil of the motion, the hips spring the ball through. I stay nice and square at that release point. That extension is going to give me a lot of accuracy. Let's watch the thing again, full speed one more time. Now we're going to get into a clip here from Aaron Rodgers. That's a great job by Brady throwing that thing. I don't really care if that's fake or not. We're just looking at the mechanics. So let's talk about some of the similarities, right, from Rodgers. So Rodgers is throwing this deep ball. So let's talk about just like what he does that's similar to Brady, right? So when he goes to throw, look where that weight's at, right? Like 75 on that back leg. If you guys are familiar with this channel, you've heard me talk about that a lot lately. So what do you think he's going to do? Is he going to push off this back foot like a pitcher, or is he going to shift that weight? It's just a weight shift. You see how that weight's just shifting. That weight gets to the outside part of his leg, and guess what? That brings the front hip open. That gets the back hip through, and look where the ball is. The ball is trailing that back hip. Now, let's take a look at that front arm, right? Especially on a deep ball. He's here, front foot's down, that front shoulder's closed. He's got some kind of a backstroke. Again, it doesn't have to be that perfect L. It's all a lower half and hip mechanics throw, fellas. And now when he releases it, you see how he keeps that hand nice and tight to his frame. Hands almost by his face like he's eating a sandwich, and that front shoulder doesn't end up pointing way behind here. You see how he turns just a little bit? That's okay. That turn is okay. If you're a quarterback and you have a little bit of a rotation with that front side like this, that's totally fine. As long as this front shoulder ain't pointing over here and your front foot doesn't end up pointing over there, we're going to be at an okay spot. So you see there's two similarities between Rodgers and Brady, two of the best guys to ever throw the football, right? Front foot's down, front shoulder's loaded, right? He's transferring weight. He's not pushing off the back foot to give himself a long stride to throw off the sequence. The hips are rotating the ball through. Front hand stays nice and tight, and he stays square on the release. Let's look at how he lets go of this ball too, right? So he's throwing this thing up tall, but you see how there's an extension, right? And again, about 6 inches in front of his front foot. That's the magic position that I want to get to when I release that ball. So those are the main things that you have to do as a quarterback, right? None of this other crap. You see all this like fancy stuff that everybody's talking about. Those are the key consistent points that you have to have. I'm not saying every quarterback has to throw the same. I'm not saying any quarterback is the same. Everybody throws the ball different. Everybody has different things, but the key specific points that all the best guys have, they have that weight transfer. They take the ball back. They don't lift the ball. When their front foot gets down, that front shoulder's loaded on the target. The weight transfer is what's opening up the hips. That makes the ball roll through. The ball is trailing their back hip. The back hip is coming through first. And then at that release point, their front hand is clean. They stay nice and square, and they're able to extend 6 inches out in front of their stride. That's a perfect example of what you need to do as a quarterback. Let's watch it again, full speed. And again, very relaxed with that ball carriage, something we talked about in the very beginning of this video. So he goes up, drives this thing downfield, and lets his hips rotate that ball through. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comments below. I always appreciate the feedback. Always appreciate the new ideas for videos. So I hope this video helped you guys out. And again, fellas, if you guys want 400 plus videos on how to read defenses, how to recognize coverages, check out that very first link in the description, fellas. And then also, fellas, 200 plus quarterback drills and workouts, specific sets and reps for those. Also, check out that very first link in the description. You get access to over 600 plus advanced videos you can't find on any of our social platforms. Hope you could check it out. Very first link below. I'll see you guys next time.